dare I shoot this one too?
Halfway through The Last of Us Part 2, the story seems to reach its climax when it takes a risky turn. For 10 or so hours, you've played as Ellie, one of the main characters from the previous game. She is seeking revenge against this character, Abby, who brutally murdered her sort of adopted father, Joel. As Ellie, you track Abby to Seattle, where she's part of a militant group called the Wolves. And for 3 days, you go on a warpath through the city in an attempt to find her. It's set up exactly like a traditional revenge story, with Ellie hunting down everyone responsible for Joel's death, while growing increasingly obsessive, erratic, and bloodthirsty. But then Abby catches you at your hideout and has the upper hand when the game smash cuts to black, rewinds the clock, and asks you to play the next 10 hours from the villain's perspective, leading up to this showdown. Yeah. This has been a very contentious decision, hasn't it? It's not for everyone. But in this video, I want to talk about why the Switch worked for me and what I got out of that experience. Part 1. Play, don't show. The most commonly repeated piece of writing advice is show, don't tell. You can't tell your audience how to feel, you have to show them how to feel so that they actually experience those emotions themselves. This game has an example of the difference because it does both for the same scene. At the beginning of the game, we are told about the events of a dance that happened the previous night.
Let me see if I got this right. You kissed Dina,
She kissed me.
which triggered Seth to call you a not so nice word.
Yep.
Then Joel decked him,
More of a push.
and then you got mad at Joel. That part confused me.
When you first hear this, you take in the information, but you don't feel the emotion of the scene. But then later, in one of the game's many flashbacks, you get to see the scene in full. We don't learn much of anything new by seeing it play out. The beats are the same, but this time we really feel the emotion. We can't just be told that Ellie is mad at Joel, we need to be shown.
You all right, kiddo?
What is wrong with you?
He had no right.
And you do?
This is also why you can't just read the leaked spoilers for a story and decide whether you like it or not without actually experiencing the game yourself. Or when it comes to the villain character you want to humanize, the story can't just tell me I should feel bad for them. I need to be shown a reason to care. But showing scenes from the villain's perspective isn't just what we're talking about in The Last of Us 2. In an interactive medium, the game designers have a much more powerful weapon at their disposal than just showing us the character's story. By making us control Abby, it forces us to see the world from her perspective. Earlier when I was talking about Ellie's section of the game, I was using the word you, because whoever you're playing in a video game, you feel as if you are them. And Naughty Dog does this because Part 2, Naughty Dog wants to f with you. I found myself humming the song that played at the dance long after the game ended. Doing so just immediately brought me back to that bittersweet, nostalgic feeling that scene evokes. Then I found out that the song is a cover of Little Sadie by Crooked Still.
Gents and gamblers standing around, picking Little Sadie to bury in the ground.
Little Sadie is a folk song about a man, or in this version, a woman, who matter-of-factly tells us she killed the woman she's with, tried to escape, got caught, and was thrown in jail. We don't really know why the singer wanted to kill Sadie, and she doesn't appear to have any remorse about it either. But the heavy subject matter contrasts with the upbeat melody and the bright feeling of the story at that moment. The violence that is about to happen seems to be seeping into the scene. And that's exactly this game's MO. It wants to f with you. It wants to make you feel contradictory emotions as often as possible. Mostly it does this by putting the player at odds with the character. The last game did this too, but only at the end. In this game, we're constantly re-examining how we feel about Ellie. We like her from the previous game, but now she's on a quest for revenge that is way over the top. We understand her anger, but she's avenging someone who single-handedly did more damage to this world than anyone possibly could.
Think about what he did. How many people are dead because of him?
Literally every death that happens after the first game is Joel's fault, and every single person in the world has cause to see him punished. Abby just has extra personal reasons to hate him. But on some level, we want to see Joel avenged, because the first game made us feel attached to him too. And I mean, Ellie doesn't know about all the bad stuff that he did, so we understand where she... Oh wait, she knows? She knew the whole time? This is what I mean when I say that Naughty Dog wants to f with you. The first Last of Us game had a much easier task. All that game had to do was get you invested in Joel and Ellie's relationship to work. The Last of Us 2 doesn't just want you to be invested, but conflicted about your investment. Part 3, Cultivating Empathy. So that brings us to Abby, a character whose story feels like it was constructed on a bet. Like, hey, we're Naughty Dog. We're one of the most successful game studios in the world. Everyone seems to like our story, so let's challenge ourselves and do the most difficult thing possible. Let's get the players to loathe the character, just absolutely despise them. And then let's feed that rage for 10 hours of gameplay. But turn it all on its head, force the players to actually play as that character and use every trick in the book to make them come to empathize with them. And not only that, but we'll write it in a way that if they don't empathize with her at least a little bit, then they're the ones being hypocrites. Because she'll have become more morally defensible than any of the characters the audience likes. Okay, what do I mean by every trick in the book? Well, the first trick is itself the name of a book, Save the Cat, which is a book I have a lot of reservations about because it advocates for writing formulas, but is also famous for the Save the Cat idea, which is an early scene in a movie where the main character does something unambiguously good, or at least impressive, to get the audience on their side. So in Abby's first flashback, she saves a zebra. See, she's not so bad. The Save the Cat type of scene can sometimes be a little cheap, but it is effective. The designers also give her a relatable and empathetic motivation. She loses everything because of Joel, not just her father, but the idea of a better world, all the idealism of the Fireflies as an organization, and is forced to find safety elsewhere, leading her to become a ruthless soldier in a pointless guerrilla war. We get to see what her coping mechanisms are. To deal with her trauma, she has physically transformed herself, becoming as strong as possible so that she can avenge her father. A great parallel to Ellie, whose body withers as her quest takes its toll on her. Abby also has a relatable fear. She's afraid of heights, and at a critical moment in the story, she has to face that fear and overcome it, again getting the audience on her side. I called these things tricks, but really they're just solid techniques that cultivate empathy for a character. If you have a character who does good deeds sometimes, has clear fears, weaknesses, and traumas, chances are the audience is going to connect with them. But most importantly though, is that the game designers give Abby a completely impossible desire. She has all of these conflicting emotions for Owen, who she's definitely in love with, but who she rejected because she's still not over her father's death, which he was present for, making him a constant reminder of it. But then when she gets her revenge and is able to finally move on with her life, getting together with him is impossible because, oh no, he's with someone else, and she's pregnant, this girl can't catch a break, can she?
I haven't always done the right thing.
You're a piece of shit, Abby.
Aww. Step by step, the game has built empathy for Abby, taking her from the simply drawn villain of the prologue to a multi-dimensional, dynamic character that you can actually root for in the back half of the game. If this character was presented to us using all of these techniques before we saw her kill Joel, I'm pretty sure it'd be less controversial of me to claim that she garners the player's empathy. But she was introduced killing Joel, so there's this massive hurdle stopping people from caring about the character at all. And that really gets into why this game is so interesting to me, because the hurdle is there on purpose, and the game is entirely about perspective. Part 4. I hate that sniper. So there's this sequence in the Abby section of the game where you're pinned down by a sniper. You can't try to shoot back or you'll just take damage. So you have to run between cover and crawl through the mud just to get close to him. It's a video game level that you've played 1,000 times before. You know why it's here. Your inability to fight back makes you quickly resent your opponent, motivating you to defeat them. Every time he hurts you, you get angrier. But then you get to him and it's Tommy, Joel's brother, one of Ellie's friends, and the character that you probably like. It's incredible emotional whiplash, and I think it's trying to make you self-aware of how easily your emotions can be manipulated by narrative framing. Because the designers framed the scene with Abby as the protagonist, we hated Tommy for a moment there. And I'm not using the word manipulate in a derogatory sense, because stories are inherently manipulative. That is what they are trying to do. That scene forces us to experience in microcosm what the game is trying to make us feel as a whole. Both of the main characters are in the kill the sniper mindset for most of the game, just blind rage against their enemies. They have entrenched worldviews where there are good guys on one side and bad guys on the other. Ellie sees the wolves as entirely evil, which in her mind justifies her extreme violence against all of them. When Dina questions this line of thinking by pointing out that the wolves have shown mercy, Ellie shuts her down.
Why didn't they kill you and Tommy when they had the chance?
The one guy Jordan kicked my face in.
Yeah, but why do you think that they didn't finish
It doesn't matter.
In a similar scene, Abby sees the Seraphites, the religious cult that her faction has been at war with for years, as entirely at fault for all of the violence between the two groups. Another secondary character questions this belief early on in the story, and just like Ellie, Abby initially shoots her down.
We let our guard down, and they strung up an entire squad.
That was in retaliation to us shooting those kids. Manny, they're kids. It's not their fault.
Not our fault either. Those deaths are on them.
It's always the Seraphites' fault that the wolves have to annihilate them. But the arc of Abby's story is basically the arc that Joel went on in the first game. Someone who the world has beat down into an amoral monster who eventually restores their own humanity by caring for a child in need. By helping Lev, she comes to acknowledge the humanity in her enemies, renounce her previous loyalties, and try to lead a more noble life.
Come on. Those were your fucking people. You're my people.
These are simple lessons, but in playing as her for 10 hours, the game asks the player to basically go on the same transformative arc with how they view Abby. Part 5. Emotional turmoil. All of this, all 20 hours of it, is really there to build up to one big payoff. The Showdown at the Theater. It's a violent confrontation between a group of characters where we know everything about them, but they know nothing about each other. Each has been well characterized and has built enough empathy with the audience that we don't know who we're actually rooting for. More than anything, what we want is for both of the characters to stop fighting. When I am Abby fighting Ellie, I don't want to press the buttons that keep the fight going, but the game forces me to. When I am Ellie fighting Abby later on, I feel the same way. The story has shown both characters in such detail that it puts the player's emotions in turmoil. Okay, now I do also want to acknowledge that there are parts of the game that work against what I feel the story is trying to do. Because in order to accept any of this, you do sort of have to accept the jarring shifts between the gameplay and the narrative. The story is concerned with how violence tears us apart, but the gameplay tells us to have fun with a bow and arrow that shoots dynamite. You kill an absurd number of people with absolutely no remorse on your way to fighting Abby, but then the story kicks in and suddenly this death is one too many. This wasn't as big of an issue in the previous game, where everything except the final chapter had this larger justification of saving the world. Here the desires are more personal and selfish, so the fact that Ellie is just okay with killing hundreds of people to avenge one person distances us from her more than it did previously. I mean, the distance is supposed to be there to an extent. We are supposed to disagree with what Ellie wants, as I've been talking about earlier, but the gameplay takes this to absurd extremes. This game might single-handedly be responsible for reviving the use of the phrase ludonarrative dissonance. Taken as a whole, though, I think it's possible to acknowledge that contradiction without throwing away what the narrative is doing successfully. In particular, Abby's half of the game uses the basic techniques for cultivating empathy and the unique tools of video game storytelling to get the player to go on the same arc of change as the character. And if you're able to reconsider your emotions while you play, then I think the game has accomplished something pretty impressive. One of the most heartfelt scenes in The Last of Us Part 2 is Joel and Ellie's visit to the Museum of Science and History.
Oh my god, it is a dinosaur!
If you're as much a fan of dinosaurs and space exploration as Ellie is, then you can do the next best thing by checking out CuriosityStream, the sponsor of this video. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service with thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles to choose from, like Amazing Dino World and Exploring Quantum History. Not only that, but when you sign up for CuriosityStream using my link, you also get a subscription to Nebula for free. So what's Nebula? Well, it's also an educational streaming platform, but it's built by creators like me, including Lessons from the Screenplay, Patrick H. Willems, and Alt-Shift-X. It's a place where YouTubers can make content without having to worry about monetization or the algorithm. And a bunch of creators, myself included, have been making videos there that you can't find anywhere else. This includes the collaborative series Working Titles, where video essayists break down the opening titles of different TV shows. I made a video about the opening to Batman the Animated Series, so if you want to see that, you can sign up for CuriosityStream and get Nebula for free. Just go to curiositystream.com/justright and use the promo code JustRight during the sign-up process. Thanks for watching, everyone, and a big thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel on Patreon. If you want your name in the credits of the show like all of these wonderful people, then you can click the link to my Patreon page and make a pledge to support the channel for as little as $1 per video. Keep writing, everyone.